Everyone in the peaceful town of Bellwood Springs knew one another's business, and things went along slowly. Tucked away amidst undulating hills and thick forests, the village took great pride in its traditional beliefs and close-knit community. Here, in a charming cottage on Elm Street, was the seemingly ordinary home of 57-year-old widow Clara Lisinski. But beneath the surface of her peaceful life, a storm was building that would soon bring scandal and tragedy to the entire town. Clara was well known for her generosity and active participation in neighborhood issues, making her a cornerstone of the community. Maria Andrelli, her closest friend, paid her frequent visits. Maria was often accompanied by her 19-year-old grandson, Alex Andrelli, who has a bright future ahead of him. Clara was a mature, collected woman, whereas Alex was youthful, attractive, and full of life. Innocently enough, Alex started their friendship by watching over Clara and assisting with household chores. However, as time went on, their relationship took unexpected turns that left everyone stunned. Softly, with lingering looks and fleeting moments, the affair began. Alex was drawn to Clara's youthful energy, and Clara was drawn to Alex's wisdom and the stability she provided. Their relationship grew closer, and their secret meetings increased in frequency. Soon after, rumors about their liaison started to spread. Because of the close-knit community, secrets were never kept secret for very long. The revelation of the truth came as a thunderclap to Bellwood Springs. Everyone in the town was furious, especially Alex's family. Lucas and Sophia Andrelli, his parents, were inconsolable. Alex's grandmother, Maria, felt that her best friend had deceived her. The scandal caused confusion and rage in its wake and tore at the community's very fabric. Their affair was quickly looked into. In an attempt to piece together how a relationship of this nature could have developed covertly, local authorities were drawn into the conflict. When neighbors, friends, and family were questioned by detectives, their responses ranged from shock to condemnation. Under a magnifying glass, every interaction between Clara and Alex was examined and evaluated. Friends, sorry to interrupt, but please help me reach 1,100 subscribers by the end of the summer. I will be very pleased. Let's keep going. Leading the investigation was Detective Evelyn Monroe, an experienced practitioner known for her astute perception and unwavering quest for the truth. She approached the case with a mix of interest and shock. Clara had kept a detailed journal of her feelings and interactions with Alex, which Monroe found out about. This journal proved to be an important piece of evidence, providing a clear picture of their physical and emotional involvement. Tensions inside the Andrelli family boiled over as the investigation went on. Alex's father, Lucas, expressed his indignation loudly. Lucas was a strong, commanding man who had always guarded the honor of his family. In addition to shattering his confidence, the affair put the family's reputation in jeopardy. Unable to understand how Clara could have gotten his son involved, he demanded justice and retaliation. The discovery of Clara's cottage being looted marked a turning point. Clearly, someone had broken in and was looking for something. The sense of urgency was increased when a menacing note found among the wreckage was discovered. Clara was warned in the note to stop the affair or face serious repercussions. Detective Monroe stepped up her efforts after learning that things were more volatile than she had first believed. Alex tried to support Clara in the midst of the chaos. He declared his love for her, saying that they were in a sincere and consenting relationship. But it was almost impossible for them to find comfort because of his family's disapproval and the social backlash. For her part, Clara did not show signs of stress, but she was clearly under pressure. She was aware of the high price of their love, but she was unprepared for the extent some would go to in order to break it off. Once Lucas was discovered dead in his study, the investigation took a very sinister turn. At first, it was thought that the stress of the scandal had caused him to have a heart attack, but something told Detective Monroe otherwise. When the crime scene was examined more closely, inconsistent findings suggested foul play. The investigation turned from an affair scandal to a murder case, further destabilizing Bellwood Springs. A network of dishonesty and covert agendas was discovered during Monroe's inquiry into Lucas's passing. She learned that in the final days before his passing, Lucas had been having covert meetings with an unidentified person. Furthermore, the shocking discovery that Lucas had been poisoned was supported by forensic evidence. Who had the means and motivation to kill Lucas Andrelli was the question at hand. Monroe's investigation revealed long-kept secrets that linked several townspeople to the Andrelli family. The investigation uncovered a web of betrayal, retaliation, and jealousy, with Clara and Alex at its core. Everyone in the formerly quiet town of Bellwood Springs was terrified and suspicious of one another, wondering who would be the next casualty of the mounting drama. The once peaceful town of Bellwood Springs was overshadowed by the shockwaves of Lucas Andrelli's death. Detective Evelyn Monroe's murder investigation turned into a race against time as she painstakingly put together clues and spoke with possible suspects. The case became even more complex due to the scandalous relationship between Alex Andrelli and Clara Lisinski. Lucas's personal history provided Monroe with his first lead. His transactions were not as clear-cut as he had claimed to be, and he was a man of many secrets. Monroe's financial records were examined in detail, and he found multiple sizable unreported withdrawals. Monroe began to suspect Lucas might have been involved in something illegal after learning through additional investigation that he had been moving money into a secret account. The townspeople had suspicions about a number of people. Since the family's discord was caused by Clara's affair with Alex, she quickly rose to the top of the suspect list. But Monroe's gut told her that Clara was incapable of committing a crime like that. Her poise and sincere grief over the controversy and Lucas's passing gave the impression that she was more of a victim of fate than a killer. Then there was Lucas's wife, Sophia Andrelli. Although Sophia had always been the reserved, devoted wife, the scandal had revealed a different side of her. She was obviously resentful of Clara and filled with anger. Monroe had to admit that Sophia might have gone to great lengths to preserve her family's reputation. Nonetheless, Sophia appeared to have a solid alibi for the evening of Lucas's death, supported by several witnesses. A crucial piece of the puzzle that Monroe discovered as she went through the growing body of evidence was a string of texts Lucas's phone had received from an unidentified number. The messages were menacing. They alluded to unpaid debt and broken promises. This introduced Monroe to Marcos Stavros, a notoriously cunning and ruthless local businessman, who is also a major player in the town's unseen drama. Marcos was well known for operating outside the law and for bending regulations to his advantage with his wealth and power. Red flags were raised by multiple transactions in Lucas's financial records that were connected to Marcos's businesses. Monroe had a suspicion that Lucas had become entangled in one of Marcos's schemes and was attempting to get out of it before it got dangerous. Monroe set up a meeting with Marcos, which was exactly as tense as she had imagined. Evasive, Marcos denied any role in Lucas's demise, but Monroe was even more suspicious because of his manner and the barely disguised threats he made during their conversation. She was aware that the man she was dealing with would stop at nothing to safeguard his interests. Monroe's investigation reached a turning point when the Andrelli family and the community increased their pressure. The poison used on Lucas turned out to be a rare, powerful substance that was difficult to obtain through forensic analysis. This hint indicated that the person should know chemistry or have access to certain materials. In pursuit of this individual, Monroe found the neighborhood drugstore, which is owned by the mysterious Elise Moreau. Elise was a peculiar woman who was well known for her vast understanding of compounds and herbs. She was known for using unorthodox techniques to treat the townspeople's various illnesses. Elise cooperated, but remained reserved when Monroe questioned her. Although she acknowledged being aware of the poison, she denied having anything to do with Lucas's demise. But Monroe was suspicious because of her hesitation and the fact that she had been spotted with Marcos several times. Monroe discovered a startling connection as the investigation went deeper. Elise and Lucas had a past. Years prior, they had been romantically involved, but the relationship ended badly. Elise held a grudge against Lucas that she carried for a long time, and Monroe questioned whether this old wound had become more serious. However, Monroe was at a loss for evidence, as Elise was not directly connected to the crime. In the meantime, Bellwood Springs was a raging town. Everyone was on edge due to the scandal of the affair and the murder that followed. As a result of their shared guilt and the attention of the public, Clara and Alex began to feel more and more alone. The realization that his actions had started a series of events that ultimately resulted in his father's death particularly affected Alex. The breakthrough was not what was expected. Curious about the ongoing investigation, a local teenager set out to conduct his own research. In Lucas's study, he discovered a secret compartment that held a cache of documents and letters. Among them was a thorough description of Lucas's interactions with Marcos, complete with a signed contract, accusing Marcos of illicit activity. Equipped with this fresh proof, Monroe faced Marcos again. He could not handle the pressure this time. He eventually gave in to pressure and admitted the truth. Although Lucas had participated in one of Marcos's schemes, he attempted to back out of concern for the repercussions. Elise's resentment had been exploited by Marcos, who had recruited her to poison Lucas in an attempt to silence him. Monroe was able to piece together the remaining details with the help of Marcos's confession and the supporting documentation. Marcos had planned the murder, and Elise had provided the poison. Following the two's arrest, Bellwood Springs started the long process of recovering from the trauma that had engulfed it. Despite being forever changed by the scandal, Clara and Alex managed to find some measure of peace. Justice had been done, and the truth had come to light, but the wounds persisted, serving as a warning of how one secret could destroy a whole society. Bellwood Springs was shaken by the arrests of Elise Moreau and Marcos Stavros, but the town also felt a somber sense of relief that justice was finally being served. Everyone in the community was curious to see how the saga would end, and the trial that followed quickly became the talk of the town. The trial represented new information for Detective Evelyn Monroe, but it was also the conclusion of a laborious investigation. The prosecution presented a strong case as soon as the court proceedings got underway. According to the narrative, Marcos Stavros was the mastermind behind the murder, motivated by his desperate attempt to silence Lucas Andrelli and shield his illegal activities. Conversely, Elise Moreau was portrayed as a willing participant who used her knowledge of poisons to carry out the lethal deed. The correspondence and records discovered in Lucas's research were exhibited as incriminating proof, presenting an unambiguous image of deceit and plot. Ever the cunning tactician, Marcos assembled a strong defense group by casting doubt on the veracity of the evidence and offering alternate possibilities. They made an effort to place the blame elsewhere. They contended that other enemies might have had a reason to assassinate Lucas, and that his financial dealings were far more intricate. Additionally, the defense attempted to disprove Elise's involvement by portraying her as an innocent party who Marcos had tricked. Elise was a mixture of regret and defiance when she was called to testify. She denied having any plans to kill Lucas, but she did acknowledge having a previous relationship with him and her subsequent resentment. The main thrust of her defense was her allegation that Marcos had threatened her safety and livelihood and had forced her to comply. Her testimony demonstrated that the relationship dynamics were more intricate than previously thought, adding layers of complexity to the case. Weeks passed during the trial, with fresh testimony and evidence emerging every day. Town witnesses shared their stories, which gave the story more context and nuance. Additionally called to testify were Clara Lisinski and Alex Andrelli, whose relationship and the scandal that followed were closely examined by the media. They felt some sympathy for Clara because of her cool head, and Alex because of his sincerity, but the scandal still hung over them. Detective Monroe's statement was crucial. She described the chronology of the investigation, the finding of important evidence, and the steps taken to result in the arrests. Her concise, methodical response supported the prosecution's position by emphasizing the breadth of the probe and the strength of the evidence against Elise and Marcos. The emphasis of the trial shifted to the reasons behind the crime as it was coming to an end. Marcos was motivated by greed and the need to hide his tracks, according to the prosecution. Elise's unresolved grudge against Lucas and her ability to manipulate others were the reasons for her involvement. Nonetheless, in an effort to raise doubts in the jury's minds, the defense persisted in advancing the story of coercion and alternate suspects. A forensic analysis of Marcos's phone turned up a recorded conversation between him and Elise, which marked a turning point in the story. Marcos was heard on the recording, giving Elise instructions on how to administer the poison and making clear threats to stop her if she didn't comply. This evidence directly linked Marcos and supported Elise's allegations of coercion, which dealt a serious blow to the defense. The prosecution focused on the deliberate nature of the crime and the obvious collusion between Elise and Marcos during the closing arguments. They portrayed Marcos as a cunning thief who took advantage of Elise's weaknesses to further his own agenda. Despite the new evidence undermining their case, the defense persisted in claiming that Elise was the real victim, coerced into complicity. The jury's multi-day deliberations were indicative of the case's complexity and the significant stakes at play. Bellwood Springs held its breath when the jury finally returned its verdict. Marcos Stavros was convicted of both first-degree murder and murderous conspiracy. Elise Moreau was found guilty of manslaughter. However, the admission of coercion lessened the severity of her sentence. During the sentencing phase, Marcos was given a life sentence without the chance of release. Elise received a lighter sentence with the chance of release after completing a sizable amount of her term. Although the town's wounds from the scandal and murder would take much longer to heal, the mixed verdict offered some closure. Clara and Alex had to tackle the difficult task of starting over after the trial. Although the public scrutiny had taken its toll, they were able to move forward after the case was resolved. In order to start over and get away from the memories of his father's passing and the scandal, Alex made the decision to move out of Bellwood Springs. Despite being devastated by her young lover's departure, Clara recognized his need to get away from the memories of their past. After solving a complex case with justice, Detective Monroe thought back on the complex web of human emotions and motivations that had resulted in such a terrible conclusion. She had proven her abilities and intuition through the case, which reinforced her conviction that the truth must always be pursued, no matter how complicated the route. The narrative of Lucas Andrelli's murder, Alex Andrelli, and Clara Lisinski remained a moving reminder of the complicated dynamics that lurk beneath the surface of a seemingly tranquil town, even as Bellwood Springs gradually went back to its regular schedule. A cautionary tale about love, betrayal, and the pursuit of redemption. The affair that had shocked everyone, the investigation that unearthed long-forgotten secrets, and the trial that sought justice had all become part of the town's folklore. Bellwood Springs was left to deal with the social and emotional fallout after the trial, as the dust started to settle. Once a representation of scandal, Clara Lisinski's cottage now stood as an example of tenacity. There were pockets of understanding and sympathy for the woman who had unintentionally become the focus of a tragic story, even though the town remained wary of her. Clara's existence adopted a new cadence. She threw herself into volunteer work, lending a hand to those in need and progressively re-establishing her reputation in the neighborhood. Her broken relationships started to heal under her quiet strength and unwavering kindness, gradually shifting the perception that she was the bad guy in the scandalous affair. Even though she carried the burden of her previous deeds, she found comfort in small deeds of kindness and purpose in helping others. Alex Andrelli moved to a far-off city so he could start over after leaving Bellwood Springs. Determined to create a future undefined by his turbulent past, he enrolled in college. He was able to think clearly about his actions and the effects they had on him because of the distance. He knew leaving Clara behind would be the only way to go on and pay tribute to his father's memory, even though it was painful. Meanwhile, Lucas's widow, Sophia Andrelli, struggled with her own issues. The trial had revealed the gaps in her ostensibly flawless life, compelling her to face the secrets of her husband and her part in the dissolution of the family. She went to counseling, getting the strength to start over and make amends with her surviving family members. Although Sophia had to go through a difficult period of self-examination, her journey eventually led to forgiveness and healing. After being praised as a hero for her part in cracking the case, Detective Evelyn Monroe went back to work feeling inspired. Though it had been one of the hardest cases she had ever handled, the Lucas Andrelli case had strengthened her resolve to see justice done. She kept working for Bellwood Springs. Her handling of the case cemented her reputation as an in-depth and sympathetic investigator. With the passage of time, the town's collective memory of the scandal and murder started to slowly fade. The news and stories took center stage, and Bellwood Springs' life returned to its comfortable tempo. However, those who had been impacted by the affair continued to think about the lessons that were discovered during the ensuing investigation. Years later, Alex made a quick visit back to Bellwood Springs. He had reconciled with his past and developed a prosperous career. He made it a point to see Clara, who continued to reside in the Elm Street cottage during his visit. Their reunion was filled with memories and unsaid words, making it bittersweet. Their bond remained strong, even though their relationship had changed. Clara had aged gracefully, a lifetime of experiences reflected in her eyes. She was so happy to see Alex again and greeted him with open arms. They walked around the town and visited places they knew well, spending the day talking about the past. Even though their paths had diverged, it was an opportunity for both of them to acknowledge the journey they had taken together and find closure. With the sun lowering over the hills as they sat on Clara's cottage porch, Alex talked about his new life, his goals, and the lessons he had discovered. With a sense of pride, Clara listened, her heart expanding at the realization that their relationship had produced something lovely, in spite of the suffering and controversy. She urged him to keep going after his goals and to never forget the courage he displayed in the face of difficulty. Alex gave her a final hug before heading off to start his new life, and their parting was gentle. With a mixture of satisfaction and sadness in her heart, Clara watched him leave. She was aware that their tale, despite all of its difficulties and suffering, had ended in development and atonement. Bellwood Springs prospered in the ensuing years as its citizens went about their daily lives. The town's history now includes the tale of Clara Lazinski, Alex Andrelli, and Lucas Andrelli's murder. It is spoken in quiet voices and with thoughtful looks. It was a reminder of the depths that lie beneath the surface of every human heart, the ability to love and betray, and the enduring force of forgiveness. Though Detective Monroe's work was far from finished, the Lucas Andrelli case continued to be a turning point in her career. She was now more driven than ever to pursue justice for people who were unable to speak for themselves after it had put her resolve to the test and sharpened her skills. In Bellwood Springs, her name became a byword for honesty and commitment, inspiring a new wave of detectives. Clara's life proceeded with a quiet dignity. She kept up her volunteer work, finding happiness in the little commonplace deeds of kindness that characterized her. Her cottage, which was once the scene of scandal, was transformed into a haven for those in need, demonstrating the transformational power of kindness and resiliency. With its gentle hills and tight-knit community, Bellwood Springs continued to be a place of stories, all interwoven into its rich past. And among those who had experienced the controversy and the trial, the legacy of Alex Andrelli and Clara Lazinski was one of unwavering resilience, a monument to the human spirit's capacity for recovery and atonement, even in the most dire circumstances.